Alden Cass completed a study on stress in the brokerage industry 2 years ago when the stock market and the economy were booming. He found the rate of clinically diagnosable depression more than 3 times higher than that of the general population. He's talked to a lot of brokers in the aftermath of 9/11, and he is troubled.
They're really having a lot of trouble coping, and the unwritten rule within these firms is don't talk about it.
But what exactly is burnout, and how big a deal is it? Teachers, brokers, lawyers, doctors, nobody is immune.
It's widespread. It's anyone who is not getting what they wanted from their job.
And it's not just work, it's relationships too.
It's relationships that you're in. It's, you know, what your expectations are for marriage, how things are working with your family.
What is it? It's called burnout.
I would define burnout as almost like a total meltdown between mind and body. It's kind of like an emotional numbing.
Got burnout? Most people do, and 'tis the season.
This is my busiest time of year, a time where a lot of people in high-pressure, fast-paced jobs start to get some more downtime to think and reflect.
A reminder that if this occupational hazard goes unchecked,
it can get worse. It's linked and correlated with substance abuse, divorce rates increasing, and it could lead to severe major depression.
You know what I mean? So you're married, but somebody else has caught your eye. Maybe you've even considered going for it and having an affair. Should you tell your spouse? Huh? Well, some marriage counselors say it's actually a good idea to confess the temptation. Joining us now is Dr. Alden Cass. He is a clinical psychologist. Some of your colleagues, their theory would be that it's better to head off an affair basically before it happens, because you can kind of clean up the mess. It's easier to fix it beforehand than deal with it afterwards.
That's true. However, it's true to not focus on adultery, though, because adultery is really not the issue. It's what's coming before the adultery, which is the problem in marriage. The break-off in communication between the couple.
So, and I think that some people think that just because I'm attracted to somebody else, it doesn't always signify that there's something wrong in their marriage or their relationship, but it sounds like you're saying that there usually is.
Well, you could be attracted to someone, but crossing that line and actually acting on that impulse is a completely different ballgame. If you're actually entertaining having an affair with someone, that's usually a byproduct of something wrong with the marriage. And if you really drill down into the marriage and the relationship, you find that, you know, at the root are problems with trust, communication, and respect for each party in the relationship, the emotional needs.
There's, you know, trust goes to the heart of this, too, because the psychologists say it's a good idea to tell your spouse that you're going to have it, say, you should have a written agreement or a spoken agreement that I'm going to do this. I promise you I'll tell you if I'm thinking about doing this. And that all goes to trust. It seems like nobody trusts anybody these days.
The new generation of marriages.
Why is that?
I mean, well, if you think about it, I find it rather humorous that they would come up with the idea of a written agreement to admit that you're going to have an affair before you do it, because that never happens. I mean, written agreements do not prevent someone from acting on an emotional decision moment.
Right. So bottom line, if we give you 20 seconds to say what's your advice to people who are married out there or in significant relationships?
Really tell your spouse assertively what your needs are, emotionally, sexually, everything. Get that out on the table initially. Go for counseling early and often. You know, we go every 6 months for a checkup at the dentist's office to make sure that everything's good. Why don't we do that for our marriages and put that much time in to make sure that it continues on smoothly?
All right, Dr. Alden Cass. Dr. Cass, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
In the Wall Street world of big personalities, Bernard Madoff did not stand out. He was low-key, understated. His business card had no title. Friends say he was shy. But inside was the drive of a highly competitive person.
There's a need to prove to the world that I am somebody powerful.
Madoff reported steady annual returns, 10 to 18%, year in, year out, never seeming to lose.
That determines whether you're a success or failure. They get their identity from how solid their returns are.
But
and Wall Street executives received $18 billion in bonuses this year despite disastrous results. President Barack Obama said, "Shame on you." Why can't they give up their bonuses and perks when they're laying off thousands of workers amid the worst recession in decades? Clinical psychologist Alden Cass specializes in coaching Wall Street executives. He says corporate chieftains believe they deserve their lavish benefits.
But they feel that they're entitled to it on a certain level. They use what we call in psychology a defense mechanism called rationalization to make it feel right for themselves so that they can look themselves in the mirror every day and every morning and saying, I deserve this chauffeur.
Some investment banking experts say perks are needed to lure and keep talent. Greed fires them up.
So they're always looking over their shoulder to see who's catching them. And that's what actually keeps them up at night.
High on the street. It's not the back alleys. It's happening at the biggest firms. The power of money meets a dangerous addiction next. Making money isn't the only thing Wall Street seems to be addicted to these days. With the market booming, mental health experts say this year's profits are fueling drug use within investment banks big time. Dr. Alden Cass is a clinical psychologist and performance coach for Wall Street traders and brokers, and he is president of Catalyst Strategies Group and a columnist for TheStreet.com. Alden, is drug abuse on Wall Street really on the rise?
Well, I think I've just noticed it more over the last year or two. I think that drugs have always been a part of the financial services, but it's been a part of many other jobs where your performance is monitored on a daily basis, where there's high pressure. And, that goes into professional sports, anywhere where you're going to be competitive daily and judged on your performance. But I've noticed within my practice, I've had more referrals to 30-day rehab facilities for Wall Street traders and brokers that really hit rock bottom. And, the shell shock of going to work every day and the market gyrations, it finally got to them. And they needed more help than just could be gotten just by going to a psychologist.
That's kind of difficult for us to understand in light of the current boom. Things are great on Wall Street. Bonuses are great. Right. The market is booming. So it seems like there's a lot to be happy about. You sound like you're talking about people who are depressed. And
I know it's totally paradoxical, Melissa. When I was I did research in 1999 during the last tech bubble. And I found that when things were great back then, there was all this irrational exuberance. Everyone was motivated to get to work and work long hours. But with that, they're trading their mental health in exchange for success financially.
What kind of drugs are we talking about?
Well, in '99, it was more cocaine, heroin, and marijuana and alcohol. Alcohol has always been a big problem and is actually starting to become a little bit too normalized throughout the industry. Right now, I'm seeing a lot more prescription drug use, drugs that you would have. People are prescribed by their psychiatrist to treat attention deficit disorder, or the weekend warrior athletes who pull out a back muscle and they all of a sudden now are on Vicodin. And they get hooked, and once the train of addiction starts, they don't know how to get out, and until it's too late, unfortunately.
All right. Alden, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having me. It takes one positive thought to wipe out an entire army of negative, bearish thoughts that could cycle through our head, and I'm going to now teach you some of the strategies for harnessing your emotion back so that your performance will improve.
Now, Bernard Madoff in the United States was viewed as a saint before all this came out. We're lucky they didn't name a street after him in Manhattan at this point, or give him a knighthood like they did for Sir Robert Allen Stanford. He gave to charities, he was helpful. That is what was seen on the surface, was a guy who was giving. He was calm, he was just well received by everybody until this all came out. So I think my message to you is that we have to see through the smoke and mirrors and really assess what's the true motivations behind people's actions.
Boys and girls, the pressure to be popular is perpetuated by the things they watch on TV. They watch these 25-year-old cool kids playing the parts of high school students. So they develop an inaccurate perception of how teenagers are supposed to look and act. So I came up with something for the financial services industry called bullish thinking. And this is what I use with my clients in coaching sessions as a way to, it's like hold them accountable for their thoughts, to make sure that they're taking time for themselves.
After we do an autopsy on working with one of these white-collar criminals, they tend to find adultery in their past. And I found it fascinating to find out after the fact Bernard Madoff was cheating on his wife at a time. So Robert Allen Stanford had 4 kids with 4 different women. These guys get around. They push the envelope in every which way. They don't believe that rules apply to them.
Don't mistake bullish thinking for just being positive about a stock. It's a lifestyle, it's a mindset, it's a way of analyzing all that goes on in your life on a daily basis.
I've encountered many clients coming into my office who were making a great deal of money. And the first thing they said to me when they got on the couch across from me was, I make all this money, how can you help me enjoy it? I appreciate it. I can't do it.
This teenager who's being bullied is so embarrassed by being in this position, they don't want to talk about it. And they're going to, if you say, what's wrong, they're going to say, oh, nothing's wrong. Do not accept nothing is wrong as an answer.
Dr. Seuss. A skull? Scrooge! This is actually getting closer. You can't just take one glance at something and make a decision about who you're getting involved with. You have to look at all the angles. Everyone that you meet or come in contact with, you have to examine what's their real motives and look at them a lot closer than you normally do.
Happiness equals reality divided by expectations.
You really have to allow your kid to understand that there are no guarantees in life. There are none, even if you've done well. People on Wall Street don't want to be wrong, and what happened over the last year and a half was people feeling wrong about what they did, and that is an uncomfortable feeling to sit with. But we want to get past that and gain control.
This ends up being a reminder to be more cautiously optimistic, not pessimistic, cautiously optimistic about your products. Take in all the variables that could impact positively and negatively.
From working with financial executives and people in compliance like yourselves, I've learned that they prefer to see the world in black and white. Very tangible things. They like things that are certain. They like guarantees, predictive accuracy. They don't really enjoy ambiguity or things that are out of their perceived control. And it's for this reason that white-collar criminals use that arena to do their damage in amorphous gray areas of life where everyone's uncomfortable. That's where they do their damage and create their acts of destruction.
The mindset of their problem and their issue is the most important issue in the world at that moment. And there is no future. There's no tomorrow. I have the worst problem in the world. No one else will understand this problem. They catastrophize. This is the kind of thought process that happens with teens and adolescents. The attitude that you take in the morning sets you up for how you'll perform later on in the day. So we have to learn how to become more resilient when it comes to bad news.
It's okay to want more, and need more for that matter. Just be careful with expecting more. That sets you up for disappointment.
Their minds are wired for hyperstimulation, more so than ours were. They're novelty seekers. They require so much stimulation in order to fend off frustration, boredom, and lack of focus. But this is the most calming influence for Wall Street, and I'd like to get you back into this mindset going forward. So hopefully you see what's supposed to be there.
I help them quantify and understand the word happiness.